Hello and welcome back to the Kickstarter Weekly, everyone. This week's episode is looking at games that are completing their funding between January the 9th and January the 22nd, which means it's a little more than 1 week. And the reason I'm doing that, the reason that I'm having a video go for more than 1 week is because we're in January right now, and there just are not as many crowdfunding campaigns that have been launched recently. They don't merit me producing a video every week. I don't have a new campaign necessarily to highlight every week. So I am going more by what's available right now. That also means that I'm recording this on a Monday night. It should be up by Tuesday. It's going to be looking at games that are finishing between Thursday and Saturday of this week. I'm going to put out the next video probably the following weekend for the following week after that. I don't need to put out a video for next week. There's nothing that's going to be completing its funding next week that I think that we need to look at. So the next video that I put out will be looking at games about 2 weeks down the line, but I plan on having that video out in about a week and a half's time so that you'll have the time to look at the video and decide for yourself if the games that I'm highlighting in that video are games that are right for you. Now, as always in these videos, I timestamp them. I have bookmarks in there, so if you want to go down and scroll over the little bar, you can see specifically what games I'm talking about and also what sections of videos, so you can go just right to the content that you want to see. Also, if any of the games that I'm talking about that are completing their funding are games that interest you, you can go down into the description section, look at the name of that campaign, and it will have a link that will take you right to that campaign, whether it's on Kickstarter, GameFound, or BackerKit, although this week everything is on Kickstarter. But that way you can always just quickly go to the campaign that interests you, and you don't have to go and hunt for it yourself. Please don't forget to like and subscribe. That is the best way to support the channel at this time. There's going to be a lot more new content coming this year, including revamped teach and review videos with much better equipment and lighting. I'm going to start doing a deep dive video series into certain games to give you strategy tips and to look at games, in more depth than people might when they're covering it for the first time. I'm also going to be launching a Twitch channel in which I will be live streaming solo games, longer campaign games, and dungeon crawlers and heavy Euros. All of that is coming along with a Patreon eventually where people will be able to vote on things. They'll be able to vote on what videos I'm making and what games I'm going to be streaming. But for right now, the best way is to simply like and subscribe. And also, while we're in this period right now where I'm not putting out a new Kickstarter Weekly every week because, frankly, it's just not merited, if you like and subscribe and hit the alarm bell, that way you'll get notified when I publish future videos. And so if for some reason you're not checking in on the channel all the time, you'll still be notified when a new video goes out and you won't miss anything. But for right now, the next video that I'm looking at putting out in this series will likely be published the weekend of the 28th, so probably January 27th, 28th, and that will be covering campaigns that will be completing their funding the following week, so that first week of February. And right now, I'm looking at about 3 campaigns that I'll be profiling in that video, although, over the next couple weeks, things could change somewhat. Things could be added on. But for right now, it looks like about 3 campaigns in that video. There's also going to be 3 campaigns in this video, so let's get started and take a look at what those campaigns are. The first of these is for a game called OrcQuest WarPath Resurrection. This had a minimum required funding goal of $217,000. The project is currently at $362,000, which is about 1.5 times that minimum required funding goal. Now, this project is going to complete its funding on Wednesday, January the 18th. This is a game for 1 to 6 players that plays in about 45 to 90 minutes. Complexity on the game looks to be medium light, although possibly medium heavy, and we're going to set the risk associated with this campaign at low. Now, a little bit needs to be said about this. The reason that I'm setting the risk at low is because it's being published now by Monolith. And Monolith has done a bunch of games. Sometimes they've even been accused of using Kickstarter like a pre-order system, meaning the games are already done, they're ready to go. They don't really need money for production. that's kind of like its own story, its own problem. But Monolith is a solid publisher, and they're not going to drop the ball. Now, here's why people might be worried if they know the name OrcQuest WarPath, and that is there was a Kickstarter run for the same game, the same campaign a couple of years ago by another publisher. And after they collected everybody's money, the publisher went under and they never delivered the game. So there are people out there who pledged for that game, put money into it, and they never received the game. Here's the very cool thing about this campaign. Monolith has set a minimum required funding goal, which they've already passed. And their goal was if they were able to pass that minimum, they would be delivering the game not only to everyone who pledges it now, but to all of the past backers, as long as those past backers pay for shipping. So as long as they come into this campaign, they pay for shipping, they will get the game that they paid for previously. In my mind, Monolith is doing a large number of gamers, or anyone who pledged for this game once already, a huge service by providing this pretty substantial, pretty enormous game to them at no additional cost beyond shipping. Granted, people don't like to pay anything extra, and they may not want to pay shipping. I don't think they paid shipping the first time around, though. I don't think it got that far. But they will have to pay shipping this time around, but they will get the game. They will get a game that probably at this point they thought was lost. And it gives other people a chance to jump on and get this game in its entirety. And there was a lot of content produced. There was a lot of content developed and produced. They just were never able to get it to backers before the company went under. So Monolith has kind of come along almost as a public service, in my opinion, to deliver this game to new and old backers. Now, this game is a cooperative dungeon crawler with miniatures. There are a lot of chapters. It's a campaign game, but there are also ways that those chapters can be broken up, and there's stretch goals, both new and old, and I'll cover that when I get into the pledge section, which is very small because it's only one pledge. You're either going to be pledging this for everything, or you won't be pledging it. But I'll cover that when I get to the pledge section. So the game was designed by Johan Bugney and Thomas Malfroid. They also designed another game called OrcQuest. That was a card game, and then they basically took that IP and decided to make this huge dungeon crawler with miniatures, and it never completely came to fruition. But they designed both the card game and the game that we're now talking about. The art on this iteration is by Carlos Amaral, who's worked on a game called Anastyr, Alexander Brick, who's worked on a game called Bad Bones, Antal Kenninger, who worked on Machina Arcana and Machina Arcana 2nd and 3rd edition, Loic Musi, who's worked on Fireteam Bravo, Mythic Battles Pantheon, and Rallyman GT, and Daniel Zram, who also worked on Anastyr. And this new version, this new iteration, is being published by Monolith. They're best known for Batman Gotham City Chronicles, Conan, and Mythic Battles Pantheon. So, as I mentioned before, there's only one pledge for this campaign. It's $147. It's called the Resurrection Pledge. And that pledge will get you the core box, the 59 stretch goals from the original campaign. So all of the stretch goals that were hit in the original campaign. 5 expansions that I believe were all part of that initial campaign, and then the new stretch goals. They've set up some new stretch goals for this campaign. They've hit like 5 or 6 of them so far. Now, of the ones that they've already hit, the ones that I think are the most notable are 4 new one-off quests, and then another one is the ability to play all 42 quests from the original game as one-shots. So originally this game was designed to be played purely as a campaign. So you'd be going through and you'd be playing all 42 scenarios in succession as part of a larger story. But they've retooled, redesigned some things, and given players the ability to play them all as one-shots. Maybe there's gamers out there who, because of their gaming makeup, time, all these other kinds of things, they just want to be able to play them individually as one-shots. So now you will be able to do that. All 42 scenarios from the original campaign, plus those new 4 scenarios, that's 46 total, that can all be played as one-offs. Or, of course, you can still play those 42 scenarios as a campaign if you choose to do that. Shipping in the continental US has been estimated at $41, and Monolith is planning on delivering this project in October of 2023. From there, we go to the second campaign of the week of the video. That is for Circadians First Light Specialist Expansions plus Circadians Chaos Order Harbinger Expansion. Now, this is a campaign that had a minimum required funding goal of $15,000. They're currently at $73,000, which is almost 5 times that minimum required funding goal. That makes this the largest multiplier of this week. In terms of the campaign that's made the most money, just in terms of sheer dollars, that would be OrcQuest WarPath Resurrection. But the Circadians campaign has the highest multiplier. The Circadians campaign is going to complete its funding on Thursday, January the 19th. Chaos Order, including the Harbingers expansion, has a player count of 2 to 5 and a runtime of 2 to 4 hours, so it's a very long game. Whereas First Light, including the Specialist expansion, has a player count of 1 to 4 players and games run 60 to 90 minutes. Both games come in at the heavy complexity, and I'm going to set the risk associated with this campaign at low as well. It's being put out by Garpel Games. They've run a lot of Kickstarters very successfully and delivered a lot of games. And actually, they're one of the few publishers that usually delivers their games 2 to 3 months early. It's not uncommon. So they're very reliable, and they also keep shipping low. We'll be talking more about that when we get to the shipping section. Now, Chaos Order is a game that features action drafting and hand management, and it uses asymmetric factions with variable player powers. It's a very aggressive game. Monique and Naveen did a really good video on the channel Before You Play where they talk about it. I wouldn't really call it take that in the game, but so much of what you're planning can be altered by what other players do, and it can change as players are taking their actions, that there ends up becoming a very aggressive element to the game. So that's just something players should know going in. It's complex. Like Root, it's a game where all of the factions play differently, and you kind of need to know how the other players' factions are playing as well as your own, so that you don't do something that's going to empower them. You don't want to just play the game blind, which means that when you're learning the game, you need to at least have a basic understanding of the other factions and how they play, in addition to your own, on top of a heavy rule set. And then on top of that, there's also the kind of aggressive nature of the game and the long runtime for the game. So these are all just things that should be known for people who are thinking about backing this one. And it's a heavy game. So the people that it's right for, it'll be really right for, but there may be some people who would like to know these things before they get into the game, pledge the game, buy the game. So just giving you some fair warning on this one. First Light uses variable player powers as well, but it's more of a standard worker placement game where you're using worker placement with dice workers, and it's a much shorter game. It's heavy as well, but it runs 60 to 90 minutes, not 2 to 4 hours. Now, S.J. McDonald has worked on both of these expansions. He also designed Architects of the West Kingdom. He designed Circadians First Light, the base game. He co-designed Circadians Chaos Order, and he designed Paladins of the West Kingdom and Viscounts of the West Kingdom. Zach Smith, the other designer here, has worked on just the Harbingers expansion, the one for Chaos Order, and previously he's co-designed Circadians Chaos Order. So he's only been involved with Chaos Order and its expansion, whereas S.J. McDonald has been involved with all of the West Kingdom series, as well as all of the Circadians games. The art on both expansions is by Sam Phillips. He worked on both Circadians base games, as well as Hadrian's Wall and Raiders of Scythia. And finally, the publisher here is Garpel Games. They're best known for Architects of the West Kingdom, Hadrian's Wall, Paladins of the West Kingdom, Raiders of the North Sea, and Viscounts of the West Kingdom. Now, there's not going to be a pledge manager for this campaign at all. Garpel Games is increasingly moving towards really not using pledge managers, period. Which means when you're making your pledge, if there's anything that you want to add on to the game, you want to do that when you're making the pledge. Several years ago, you often couldn't do that in Kickstarter. You just have to pledge your pledge and then add on add-ons in the pledge manager. Increasingly now, though, when you go and you make your pledge, there'll be a second step where it will ask you if you want to add anything to your pledge. Sometimes that can include a second pledge, like a different pledge. So in this instance, there is not a pledge to get both of the expansions, just the 2 expansions. So you'll want to pledge for one of those 2 expansions. I mean, if you want both, you want to pledge for one of those expansions and then add on the other one as you're going through that process. But you'll have to add the second one to the first one. There's no way to pledge for them both, and there won't be a pledge manager. So for $13, you can pledge the Harbinger pledge level. That will simply get you the new Harbingers expansion for Chaos Order. For $27, you can pledge the Specialist pledge level, and that will just get you the Specialists expansion for First Light. Again, if you want to get both of them, you'll need to pledge, let's say, the Specialists one, and then add on the Harbinger pledge as you check out, before you check out. For $36, you can pledge the Upgrader pledge. What that is for is they originally put out a first edition of First Light, and then they came back later, I think when they did Chaos Order, when they ran that campaign, and they had a second edition, a new edition of First Light that changed some of the art, it changed some of the components, and so people who had the first edition and wanted to upgrade it to this newer edition needed to get an upgrade kit. So perhaps people did it at that time. If they haven't done it at that time, but they want to do it now, they can do it by pledging this pledge. This is for people who have the original first edition of First Light and they want to upgrade it to the newer second edition. That's all this pledge level is for. If you pledge $67, which is called Child of Chaos, you will get the Circadians Chaos Order base game and the new expansion for it. If you pledge $81, Child of Light, you will get Circadians First Light, and of course that is the new edition, the second edition. So at any point in this campaign, if you see anything that allows you to get Circadians First Light, you will be getting the newer second edition. So this pledge will give you that version of the base game and the new Specialists expansion to go along with it. For $147, you can pledge new Circadians, and that will give you everything. So the base game for Chaos Order, the Harbingers expansion, the base game for First Light second edition, and the Specialists expansion. Now, no matter what level you pledge at, in the continental US, your shipping estimate is $10. Garpel Games has been pretty consistent about this. They're very good at keeping shipping low no matter how much stuff you order. So $10 shipping continental US. And finally, Garpel Games is planning on delivering this project in October of 2023. Now, one final note here. There is not an ability to get sleeves through this campaign, but Garpel Games has line itemed out the sleeve counts for all of the games, all of the expansions on the Kickstarter page for this game. So if you're someone who likes to sleeve your games and you want to know how many sleeves you're going to need to buy or have them waiting, you can go to the Kickstarter page, look on it, and you'll be able to see all of the relevant sleeve counts. Our third and final campaign of the video of the week is for a campaign called Green Planet, Future Energy, and Powerline. Now, the interesting thing here is that Powerline had a campaign run for it maybe a year ago. Now Queen Games has decided to put out this Green Planet series, a line, and so Future Energy is going to be the first game in that line, but they're adding Powerline to that series, and that'll be the second game in the series. So there's a second go around, a second shot to get Powerline through crowdfunding here in this campaign. Now, this project had a minimum required funding goal of $5,500. They're currently at $15,000, which puts them just under a 3 multiplier. The Green Planet campaign is going to complete its funding on Saturday, January the 21st. Future Energy has a 2 to 4 player count. Games run about 60 minutes, and Powerline has a 1 to 6 player count, and games run about 45 minutes. Now, both of these games fall in the medium light range, and again, we're going to set the risk associated with this campaign at low. Queen Games is a fairly well-known, reputable publisher. Future Energy is a game that uses network and route building and contracts. Players are going to be fulfilling contracts, but players are working together somewhat in how they build these networks, so they'll be playing off of each other. There's not really a pick up and deliver element like you'd find in, let's say, a train game, but they will be building these networks. They're not working together. It's not cooperative. But some of the ways in which they build networks, other players will be able to utilize. And some of the mechanics will be shared between players. So it makes it a little bit of an oddity, also very unique, I think, in this space. And Powerline uses simultaneous action selection and dice drafting. Essentially, players will be rolling some dice at the start of every round, and then as they take actions, they'll have to choose which way to use those dice, starting from the right going left or starting from the left going right. And then as they use their dice, they'll be able to take various actions with them. It's a rather simple mechanic that I think makes for some rather interesting choices and keeps the gameplay fresh. Now, Powerline was designed by Dirk Henn. He's also designed Alhambra, Shogun, and Wallenstein. Future Energy was designed by Emmanuel Ornella, who's previously worked on Assyria, Hermagor, and Ultre Mare. On the artist front, Patricia Limburger is the artist for Powerline. Previously, she's worked on 12 Thieves, Alhambra, and Marrakesh. And Dennis Lohausen is the artist for Future Energy, and he has previously worked on such games as Ark Nova, A Feast for Odin, Gaia Project, The Quacks of Quedlinburg, and Terra Mystica. Finally, both games and the entire Green Planet series is being published by Queen Games, and they're probably best known for Alhambra, Amerigo, Fresco, Lancaster, and Shogun. Now, for $53, you can pledge Powerline. For $63, you can pledge Future Energy. For $104, as long as it lasts, that is the early Green Bird pledge. That's going to get you both games. I believe there were originally 100 pledges at that price. Once that's sold out, if you want both games, you'll just have to pledge the next pledge level up, which is $114. So that $104 pledge level is giving you a $10 bonus savings. At $114, the Green Planet bundle will give you both games. The final pledge level is $136. That is the Green Planet bundle plus Old London Bridge. Now, Old London Bridge is also available as an add-on for $33, but if you were to pledge through this bundle, you'd essentially be getting it for $22. Other games that you can add on to your pledge level, whatever your pledge level is, you can add on Bastille for $27, Fresco for $33, Luxor for $33, Old London Bridge, again as we mentioned, for $33 as an add-on, Runestones for $38, and Scrap Razor for $33. There is a $1 pledge, so I believe you could just pledge at that level. If you only want those items that are add-ons, I believe you could just pledge at the $1 pledge level and then add on any or all of those add-on games that you want. Now, in the United States, continental United States, free shipping. So whatever your pledge level that you're pledging at, there's no additional cost for shipping. It's already included. And finally, Queen Games is going to deliver this project in August of 2023. So that is a wrap for this section of the video this week. Those are the 3 campaigns that I wanted to share with you during this period. All 3 of them will be funding during the remainder of this week from Wednesday through Saturday. Now, in the previous video, I only covered one campaign. It was called Riftlands and Guild Academies of Valeria. It was for a new game, Guild Academies of Valeria, and Riftlands, which is a new expansion for Shadow Kingdoms of Valeria. Both games are designed by Stan Kordonsky. Recently, he had a Kickstarter delivered for a game called Endless Winter Paleo-Americans. He also had another Kickstarter delivered through his own new publishing entity for a game called Resurgence. He's also designed Lockup, a role-player tale, and that game's expansion, Breakout, I believe it's called. And I'm just really starting to like Stan Kordonsky's designs in general. He's doing really good work. Everything he designs seems to be better than what's come before. He's just hitting his stride. So I did personally back that one campaign that I featured in the previous video. Now, I'd quickly like to mention the 4 games that I've acquired into my collection during this period, and the reason that I do this is because I am gearing up to making new teach and review videos, again, with new equipment, better lighting, all this kind of thing. And the games that would, I think, be prime for this happening are the games that I personally have backed, because we know that there's going to be delivered to me eventually, and the games that I've just acquired into my collection. So I've got them, they're new, I'm excited about them. Are you excited about them? This is what you should let me know in the comments. If these are games that are interesting to you and you want to know more about them, how to play them, or whether or not I think they're good and you should acquire them, that's the whole reason I'll be making teach and review videos. And so if any of these 4 titles are titles that interest you, let me know in the comments and I can push them to the front of the production queue for teach and review videos. So the first of these is Castles of Tuscany. This is a game that I think was designed sort of as a spiritual successor to Castles of Burgundy. Castles of Burgundy is pretty widely loved. I've been playing it a lot lately on Board Game Arena, and it's a fantastic, amazing game. Castles of Tuscany went a little more under the radar. I don't think it's quite as loved, but I've been curious about it, and maybe you have been too, and I picked it up recently on a sale for $14. So it seemed like the price was right. For $14, that seemed easily worth getting it, taking a look at it, playing it a few times, and if I don't like it, I can either give it away or sell it off, or possibly eventually give it away to someone, through the Patreon that I'll eventually be doing, because I do plan on giving away a lot of games through that Patreon, games that I'm no longer keeping in my collection. That'll be another thing that I'll be offering through that Patreon at certain levels, is the ability to receive free games from me, or possibly to bid on maybe more expensive games. But at $14, I don't see any reason why I couldn't give Castles of Tuscany away to somebody who liked it, if I decide that I don't. So anyway, I'm curious. I like Stefan Feld a lot. I like a lot of his games. I really love Castles of Burgundy. I know that Castles of Tuscany is sort of a spiritual successor. So I'm curious to get into it and see what I think about it. And I guess the question is, are you curious about Castles of Tuscany as well? Let me know if you are. I also received Edge of Darkness, Emissaries of the Vale. This is for a John D. Clare game, Edge of Darkness. It is a sort of big table hog of a game. It uses the same kind of card crafting that he has in Mystic Vale and in his most recent pirate game, Dead Reckoning. And he's had a couple of expansions for it previously, so I believe this is the 3rd expansion. I have yet to crack into Edge of Darkness at all. So this seems like something that could be ripe for me taking a look at the base game and all of its expansions and letting you all know what I think. But do you like Edge of Darkness? Are you curious about the expansions? Do you want to hear more? Do you want to hear what I think about the base game and the various expansions? Again, let me know in the comments. I also received Fox and the Forest Duet. Now, last Christmas, I got the original Fox and the Forest. It's a rather simple trick-taking game, a card game, a rather light game. It's probably not the kind of game that I would personally gravitate towards, but my now wife, Kristen, got it for me for Christmas. We played it, and she didn't really love it. For whatever reason, the trick-taking aspect of it, the competitive aspect of it, gave her a little bit of anxiety. So because it's a lighter game, because it's a card game, it's a trick-taking game, it's smaller, which is great if you want to have it as a travel game, and a lot of people like it. But it just seemed like the only time I would probably play that game is with her, and she didn't really like it. So I gave it away, but I knew that she would really like the cooperative version, which is Fox and the Forest Duet. So this year I acquired Fox and the Forest Duet. I'm interested to crack it open with Kristen and see if our experience is different, being that it's a game that we're going to be playing together cooperatively. So if that's a game that you'd like to hear me talk about, do a teach and review on, let me know. The 4th and final game I acquired into my collection is Undaunted Stalingrad. Now, this is the 4th game in the Undaunted series. This is a war game where, the first 2 games were played by 2 players, kind of head-to-head, and they're moving tiles around, they're doing various actions, kind of action drafting. It's a war game, right? They put out an expansion called Reinforcements that added various things to both games, so you could use reinforcements with either of the previous games, North Africa or Normandy, and it also gave you the ability to play either of those games in a solo mode. There's a lot of people out there who like solo games, and I think they knew that going in, and I think that was reconfirmed for them with Reinforcements. And so Stalingrad is this massive campaign. This is like an $85 game. So that is something I'd really like to get into, and I think that is the sort of game that would be awesome to eventually do streaming on Twitch, because I can play that one whenever, in the dead of night if I want to, by myself, and just go through the entire campaign over a period of time. That Twitch channel, eventually I want to be able to do solo stuff on it, and also, bigger campaign games like Oathsworn, Into the Deepwood, and Madara, games that I'll be playing probably with some other friends. And then also some heavy Euros, because I really love, the Tall Lacerda games, the Mind Clash stuff like Anachrony and Tricarion, a lot of the board and dice games, Capstone's putting out amazing stuff, Osprey's putting out a lot of really good stuff. So I'd like to get all that stuff in the heavy Euro section. But certainly as far as the solo games go, I think Undaunted Stalingrad would be a fantastic series to feature on Twitch live streaming. So again, let me know what you think. If that's a game you'd like a teach and review for, maybe if that's a game you want to tune in and see me play through on Twitch eventually once I get that channel up and streaming later in the year. The final section of the video is the played games. I haven't played any new in-person games recently in the last few weeks. I've been busy with some personal things, some holiday things, and so the only playing that I've been doing is on Board Game Arena. So I'm going to quickly go through these games because these are all games that I've talked about recently. I'm just going to update my scores. That way you all will know where I stand with various games, what I like, and how that compares with you. So I've played Barrage a couple more times, and I'm continuing to give that score a 9.0. I've played Caper Europe once more, and I'm continuing to give that game an 8.0. I have played the Castles of Burgundy, I think 5 more times, and I'm continuing to give that game a 9.0. I've played Great Western Trail 3 more times, and the Isle of Cats 2 more times, and both of those games I'm continuing to give an 8.5. I did a tournament of Lost Ruins of Arnak, so I ended up playing that game 12 more times, and I'm continuing to give that game a 9.0. Patchwork I've played 7 more times. I'm continuing to give that game a 7.5. Seasons I've played twice more, and I'm continuing to give that game an 8.5. Tapestry I've played once more. This is just the base game now, and I'm continuing to give that game a 7.5. And then finally, Wingspan I've played 3 more times, and I'm continuing to give that game an 8.5. As time moves on, as I get my studio space up and running and start to get the teach and review videos made, I probably will be doing a lot more less game playing on Board Game Arena, and I'll be featuring more games that I'm playing live and in person, and I'll be talking about those. So you'll be able to hear my thoughts and my initial scores on some newer games as I'm playing them physically for the first time. Thanks very much for watching, spending a little time with me, hearing my thoughts. Hopefully I gave you some food for thought on the 3 campaigns that are completing their funding this week. And remember, I'll be back the last weekend of January with a new Kickstarter weekly, looking at the games that are completing their funding, at least 3 of them I think, in that first week of February. Until then, take care, play lots of games, and I'll see you very soon in the next video.